All right, guys. Thank y'all so much for coming out. This is Sam Sumlin with Space Coast Flies. We're really lucky that Sam took time out of his day. Sam is a unbelievably experienced angler here on the Alabama Gulf Coast. He's born and raised in around Gulf Shores. So if you want somebody that is super familiar with that island, with that surf fishing, I can't think of anybody more knowledgeable. And it was just so nice of Sam to take this time out of his day to come visit with us. But if you guys want to support Sam at Space Coast, you guys can go to spacecoastflies.com. Is that it?
Yep.
Beautiful. And as I said earlier, I don't do, for Lost Angler guys, I don't have any online shopping, okay? But Sam and I do carry a lot of brands in common. So if you're looking for something and you are able to come store, please support Sam up at Space Coast.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Hey guys, thank you for coming out. Thanks Peter for putting this on. I'm glad to be here and hopefully share some knowledge that you may not know. Some of you guys have maybe already seen this presentation before. I know Chuck has for sure.
Nice slides.
Yeah, we got some slides. So a lot of these visuals will actually hopefully really come in handy because the surf can be very intimidating to tackle at first. There's just a lot of water. It's not like going to a flat and there's grass there and there's redfish and there's not points. Once you get into it, you will notice that there is a lot of different variations in beaches, but to like the untrained eye, you show up to a beach, sand, water, outside bar, that's it. That's what most people see when they first roll up, and I'm gonna show you how to break it down into pinpointing those specific locations to maximize your chances at catching fish. What I'm gonna focus on is this area, this island in specific, from Dauphin Island to say Johnson's Beach. That's like usually my normal territory. We do venture further into like Destin for their cleaner water and more sight fishing over there. A lot of the fishing I do here is from Fort Morgan to Orange Beach though, so I'm gonna kind of specifically hone in on those areas. These are just a list of the species you'll see. Everybody knows them. Pompano, speckled trout. We actually have a very unique fishery here. A lot of the world does not have speckled trout in the surf. Sometimes you'll see it on like the west coast of Florida, out on the islands in Louisiana. You'll see those big specks out there. But here is actually like probably like ground zero for big speckled trout that get actually out into the Gulf. You don't see that a lot of places. I talk to friends in Pensacola and they're like, you're catching trout on the beach? Like, we're 10 miles by water from them and they don't catch any, or maybe like a rare one, and where we'll go out and we'll catch 15 or 20 in a day. You know, so it's really something special. So we'll get more into that. Redfish in the surf, flounder, whiting, Spanish mackerel, ladyfish, bluefish, jack crevalle. You want to fish summertime, you can catch ladyfish until your arms fall off right now, and Spanish mackerel too. It's a really fun fish. If you're new to it and just want to defend a rod, I'm just going to go through a few photos. These are all local photos here. Pompano, flounder in the fall time, whiting, big bull reds. We get those on the beach spring and fall. Speckled trout, bluefish, Spanish mackerel. These are some of the big trout we're talking about. These big, 25-inch plus trout. You get these big gator trout on the beach, and these fish are like, they're like a totally different species almost, like than the fish you'll catch in the bay. They're a lot, you'll see like these are like a lot lighter in color. Like see how few spots they have. They'll almost have like purple, like bright purple backs. And they have, like if you look at these fish from the top, they're thick fish. I don't know if it's because they live in the surf, they're just feeding on different things. They fight a lot harder, they're more aggressive than like the fish in the bay. And obviously some of the bay fish move out into the surf, but we find that like a lot of these bigger females and bigger males that we'll catch in the springtime are actually like, it's almost like you're catching something different. Like they're way more aggressive. We'll get into the gear first before we break down the beaches. I fish with a 7-weight on the beach 100% of the time. I have a 7-weight. Occasionally, maybe if it's flat calm, I'll take a light rod out, like a 4 or 5 weight, if I know where there's some pompano or stuff, and I can just have a lot of fun, just like a novelty thing on light rod. But a 7-weight, I'm throwing heavy flies, so I like A 6 weight would probably be more fun for most of these fish, but I go up to a 7 just for the ability to sling those heavier, bigger flies. So anything from like a 6 to 8 weight, over that, like none of these fish are really going to challenge you. I land big bull reds on 7 weights, so it's not a problem. They're not going to dump a ton of line out. They will do big runs, but you can turn those fish. Other than the big jack crevalle, 7, 8 weight will conquer anything you can encounter on these here. I throw a full intermediate line. Line is very important in the surf. Mainly because of the turbulence in the surf, you're going to have wave action, you're going to have current, and a lot of these fish tend to stay down a little bit deeper. So if you throw a weighted fly on a floating line, everybody goes, well, I can just throw a heavy fly, it'll get down. You cast out, it sinks in the current, that fly's going to drop. Of course it's going to get down. The first strip you make, that flies right back to the surface. No matter how heavy that fly is. If that line is floating, it's going to pull that fly up, and for the rest of that cast, your fly is in the upper part of the water column. So that's where line becomes very important in the surf. These intermediate lines, I throw a full intermediate. I know Peter likes an intermediate tip. He talks about the lost tip that they have here. I would almost prefer to throw a full sinking line over a floating line in the surf. If you only have floating line and you don't have a dedicated intermediate line set up for the surf, they make these sink tips right here. These are for sale here. It's just like a 10-foot leader extension. It extends your fly line, and it's actually weighted. So it turns your floating line into like a sink tip fly line. And what that's going to do is that's going to keep that fly in the strike zone, like in that fish's face more often. Because like I said, you can get it there with the heavy fly. As soon as you start stripping, you want that fly in the zone as much as possible because you're doing a lot of blind casting in the surf. So you really want to maximize your cast to have that presentation as long as possible. So with a full intermediate line, the second I let it sink, I'm stripping, that line stays suspended. So intermediate line sinks like 1 to 2 inches per second. So I'm going to make a cast, I'm going to let it sink 10 seconds or so to get down to the bottom, and then as I'm stripping, that fly might hop off the bottom, but it's going to stay in that zone. It's going to stay in that bottom layer. So that's where I feel like that's one of the most important pieces. Go back here.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You want to interrupt you?
No, you're good. Yeah.
So you're talking about the zone. So what is the zone? Is it down
The
on
the bottom of the water column. Yep.
Okay. So like what, a foot or two off the sand?
Yep. Yeah, that's where I like my fly to be. And from the middle of the water column, whether you're in, say if that trough is 6 foot deep, that's the bottom 3 feet. I want to be in the bottom half of the water column most of the time. These fish will come up and eat on the surface. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could throw a floating line and be productive. But I do feel like more times when my fly's down deeper, and a lot of times it's also because the current is maintaining that tension with your fly. You want to be connected with your fly to feel that bite, because you're not sight fishing a lot of the times. I mean, we all love those clear days where it's flat, calm, beautiful. You see the redfish and pompano in the trough and you can make a cast, but let's just be honest, that's just not the case most of the time. So we're targeting specific areas. So when I can be in touch with that fly, and if you have a floating line that's floating on the surface and you got turbulence from waves, that line is moving all around. So that line's getting pushed by all that white water, and what that sinking line does, it gets it right below that like surface level turbulence, and really makes you like maintain contact with that fly. So the more I've done it, the more like I rely on that. I don't take anything but an intermediate. I'll throw topwaters occasionally, and I even throw those on my intermediate line. You just gotta make a good cast, get it stretched out, and start stripping immediately with like a gurgler or a popper, and it will stay up, and you can get those strikes. But most of my fishing on the beach is lower in the column. Leaders, I throw a 9-foot, 20-pound leader. These fish aren't leader shy.
Straight. 9-foot straight leader?
I use like a butt section. I usually, on all my leaders, I usually have like a 40-pound butt section, like 6 foot of 40, 3 pound to 20 or 30. I do throw 30 in the surf a lot. especially if there's a lot of, like right now, I would definitely lead her up. There's a ton of ladyfish, Spanish mackerel, bluefish, and those will, I mean, you'll just lose fly cast after cast. Even with 40 pounds sometimes, I mean, a Spanish mackerel will cut through 40 pound like it's a razor. So you're gonna lose flies. I never go to wire just because I don't wanna sacrifice those bites, you know, say like, you know, a little bit pickier redfish comes through the lineup. I don't wanna sacrifice those bites by going to wire. If you just wanted to target those toothy critters like bluefish and Spanish, they're really fun. You could put like a short section of like a single strand wire, and that could help if you just want to have fun with them and not worry about it. But usually 20 pound gets it done. Like I said, I go heavier for blues and Spanish. If I specifically want to target whiting, which is actually a really overlooked thing around here, those whiting can be very fun. They're finicky little fish. You throw small like bonefish style flies at them. They actually fight like a small like underslot redfish. They can be a blast. You can see those really shallow. You can sight fish them really close. They can be a little picky. I catch them on 20 all the time, but sometimes I'll go down to like 16 or 12. Like if I just see a lot of them and I just strictly want to target those whiting, I will lead her down some. Stripping basket. This is an essential piece, I think, for line management in the surf. These right here, he sells them. How much are these things? 40 bucks? Something
No,
like
they're
that?
only like $35.50.
Yeah, okay, exactly. $35.50, there you go. This will make your day so much more enjoyable in the surf. I take people for the first time surf fishing all the time, and they don't have one, and they're fighting their line all day long. What happens is, if you end up waiting, your line's in the water, so when you go to punch that 80-foot cast you need, that line's dragging and just ruins your whole cast. Or you're standing right at the shoreline, you've got those little waves flapping up on your feet, it's pushing that line around, and you just got a bird's nest around your feet, and then, you know, so this 30 bucks will really, 35.50, plus tax that I mentioned, will save you. I wear mine a little bit offset, hanging about as low as comfortable. I like to be able to get like a full strip. So I keep it right there to where my hand's going straight in there without like busting, you know, busting your knuckles all day. But I want to be able to strip my line in there, you know, whichever direction you strip. But these are almost a necessity. I will not fish the beach without one. If I forget it, I'm 20 minutes away from the house, and I turn around and go get it. That's how important I think this is. Yeah, you can also sell hot dogs. That's what a friend of ours' wife was like, why do you have a hot dog basket on? Never thought about that. We went through the intermediate line and sink tips. We'll get into flies. I mentioned some of these. Clouser minnow, everybody knows clouser minnow. It's probably the most effective fly on the planet. No difference in the surf. Clouser minnow will catch every single fish that you can encounter walking the beach. A clouser minnow will catch it. Doesn't really matter which color. I'll get into colors, but olive over white's always a good choice. I like bright colors. I'm actually going to pass these around. This is just like, I just threw some of these in today. Pass those around. That's like a box that I would take to the surf. Those neon flies you'll see on the bottom left, I throw those 99% of the time. I'll pick one of those out and show you in a minute. That's the white. Gravity minnows, like a weighted brush head minnow. I do throw a lot of heavy flies. Like I said, I like to be down in that strike zone. These fish, you're fishing a little bit deeper water. They're not always sitting on the surface. Most of these pompano redfish are cruising at the lower levels, so I like to get down and stay down. Sand flea imitations, you see these all over the place. They work great. All the fish in the surf feed on sand fleas. Everything from flounder to redfish to pompano will eat a sand flea. For pompano and whiting specifically, I do throw these bonefish flies. Like any traditional bonefish fly, you'll see one in there like a little weighted spawning shrimp style fly. Any traditional bonefish fly is great for whiting. They feed on those, yep, just like that. They feed on those little small shrimp. I like just a little pink or white, just, natural with a little bit of hot spot color in there. That seems to do really well if I'm going to target those smaller fish in the surf. And then the Surf Candies glass minnows. That's like a resin-headed, smaller bait fish. It's going to look similar to just like a normal glass minnow. There's a lot of glass minnows in the surf. Those are really great when there's a lot of Spanish and bluefish around. They like to gorge on the small ones.
How big?
2 inches. Yeah, 2 inches to 3 inches. Yeah, you can see some there. Yeah, those will absolutely just crush the Spanish mackerel, especially right now. We've been catching them on flies like that all week, and some of those smaller like brush bait fish I throw a lot. They're mainly like most of my flies are 2 to 3 inches. Occasionally, like if there's big trout are around, I know they're feeding on those mullet. I will size it up to like a 3 or 4 inch, like a mullet, like a finger mullet size fly that does really well. You will find that a lot of people think about the surf, their mind immediately goes to pompano. That's just like such a cool fish. It's one of my favorite fish. Everybody goes pompano, sand flea because they know, or pompano, ghost shrimp because they think of surf fishing traditionally. I grew up surf fishing, throwing a spinning rod. Everybody breaks the sand fleas. You're going to throw the little sand fleas, and they absolutely work. And the sand flea imitation flies absolutely work. But I was talking to him earlier about what I figured out recently. I used to be obsessed with catching pompano on the fly. That's all I wanted to do. Like before I caught one, I was like, I've got to catch one of these things. And so I went out to target these things, and I always do these small flies, and I started catching them. Well then, so like that early spring pompano run that we have, and I'll get into those seasons, I was doing that, and then when the big trout showed up, I switched to a bigger bait fish to target the trout, and I started catching way more pompano. I was like, what's happening here? I don't understand this. Like everything I knew or had learned before or had seen on the internet was just sand flea, ghost shrimp. You got to remember, pompano is a jack. And jack is an aggressive fish, and they will eat. I've seen them eat a topwater. I think the world record pompano actually came on a walk the dog lure or a popper or something like that. We caught them on gurglers, on topwater last year, going for trout, catching more pompano than trout. So I've really kind of like changed my whole tune on what pompano fishing is. I throw a lot of those brush flies. I catch them on 1/0 finger mullet style flies. I've learned they're not as picky as people think they are. If you get like a bright colored fly that's fast moving in front of a pompano, 9 times out of 10 he's going to eat it. The trick to catching these fish is just locating them. They're not incredibly picky about the flies. Prime example, that's like a 3.5 inch mullet, one just like in there, that chartreuse, bait fish fly.
You cannot out-bling a pompano.
You cannot. You see how much color is in that box right there? You can take all the brightest colors on that wall right there and wrap them on a hook, and it's going to work. Like, I'm proof of it. It works. It absolutely. Everybody's always kind of. You have the natural color guys like, well that doesn't look natural. I don't know why they eat it. Well, there's a reason that all these surf fishermen with 10-foot spinning rods have neon floats on every single rig they have. Just walk down the beach any given day, everybody with their surf cart, some 10 rods, they all have those bright colored floats. That's to attract those pompano. And that's for a reason. These are sight feeders, and they're attracted to those colors. Like sand flea eggs are orange. I believe that's why orange works really well for color. Don't know why pink and chartreuse works, but they do. I've thrown everything at them, and that's what I've narrowed it down to. That's my experience. There's people out there that probably go, nope, those don't work. I throw white flies, and I crush them on white flies all day, and he's not wrong. That's what works for him. It's a confidence thing. I firmly believe that, like, throw what you're confident in, and if it's not working, then switch it up. But I don't think they're as picky as you think they are, but the bright colors definitely have worked for me. Let's check right there. This is a prime example. These fish can all be together. We caught, he was right there with us. Redfish, pompano, and trout. Same school of fish, 3 casts, tripled up, 3 different species. So, all these-
Chasing big balls of bait fish.
Yep. Fish are attracted to other fish. So if you find the spots where these fish, be ready for anything because there can be a lot of different species mixed together. And I find that like all these flies in that box will catch any of those species. A lot of these fish, they're there for the same reason. These fish are all balled up to a really tight ball of bait, and they're all feeding on the exact same thing. That's when I saw like a fish come up. I'm like, oh, it's a big trout chasing my fly. It's up on the surface. I was stripping really fast, trying to get their attention, and pompano comes up, fins out of the water, eats it, you know, and it's like, well, that's pompano, you know, so it's proof that they act crazy. Top waters can be super fun. The big trout like the top waters, and it's just a blast to watch the like blues and mackerel like just destroy one. There's just nothing more exciting than a top water eat.
So when you throw top waters? Any time, or is it like?
It's more of like I throw more in like the spring and fall. If I'm seeing a lot of surface activity, and I'm seeing a lot of bait on, you know, if I'm seeing fish blow up on baits, then I'll obviously switch to a top water then. Other than that, it would be like super low light hours. I think there may be some information here on time, but that we can get into. But I do fish early morning. I find that the beach is super alive from. You know, I'll start walking the beach 30 minutes before the sun. You can see the sun. You'll catch those fish in the dark.
Is the surf usually more calm in the morning?
Yeah, usually you'll have a little bit lighter winds, you know, before those like, you know, through the mid morning, and then that onshore wind will pick up. This is we're going to go through the structure, what to look for. You'll hear all these crazy terms: troughs, bowls, rips, outflows, bottlenecks. This is a good thing to think of. You don't have to cast 100 feet to catch fish in the surf. Everybody thinks, see these guys again, they're 11-foot surf rods and they're bombing it as far as they can to try to get past that outer bar. I catch more fish right at my rod tip, about to pick up my cast, like leader in the guides, than I do further out. I don't know if those fish are following it in. These fish are a lot closer than you think. I mean, I catch numerous big trout and pompano. Even the pomps, everybody thinks, oh, they're going to be in the backside of that trough. That's true, they might be there. They're going to follow that cast in. When you're stripping in, think about that. You don't want to get it within 40 feet of you and then pick up 3 casts because you think, oh, well, you know, it's kind of clear. I haven't seen anything right here. Just because you don't see them does not mean they're not there. I strip all the way to the rod tip most of the time before I start recasting, because you'll be very surprised at how many eats you'll get right there at your feet, especially when you're waiting. That can be really important. I lost it.
And this concludes today's thing.
Battery. You got a plug?
Yes, sir. Right on that extension cord right behind you. Sit.
Unplug that or anything?
Yep.
Well, when it's available, so.
Alright. This is where I said the visuals would really come in handy, because trying to describe this stuff without actually seeing it firsthand can be very hard, and I believe that that's why a lot of people are intimidated to go fish in the surf, because they'll just pull up to a public beach, they'll walk out, you know, you look over, it all looks the same. But once you look a little closer, you'll figure this out. So this to me is an ideal beach structure. You see all these pockets along the beach. You see this darker water coming out. That's a rip current that's pushing out of these tide pools. You see the sandbars. You see the deeper water in between. This is ideal. If I pull up to that beach, I get excited to see this. And you can find this it's easy to see from the aerial, but from the beach, I have another slide, a couple slides that show you that, but from the beach, you'll see these waves break in, and then there's gaps between the waves, and that's like a dead giveaway of that's where the deeper water is, because the wave's not going to break where it's deeper. So those are going to be your pockets. A lot of times you'll see that current flowing out, and you'll see it spinning. So that's like a really good sign to see. Whereas this beach is shallow for a long ways. The trough starts, it's a gradual trough, and then you'll see this outer bar, which is way out of range of a cast. So if you're standing here, not that you can't catch fish here. You can catch fish at any beach. These fish migrate up and down the beach. But chances of someone, I'd put my money on this every single time, a beach that looks like this versus that. This is going to be a hard cast to make. These fish might be across here. Could be, winding up shallow, but without having that structure, you're really blind. Whereas I know here, I can hit these points and pockets and move one to the next. And I know it just narrows your focus down to that one little zone where I know that current's there, that deep water's there, that ledge, that sandbar. I know where to cast. Versus here, it's just, you walk for miles and miles and miles before you stumble across the beach.
So in your experience, that first beach that you like,
Yep.
where's that beach at? In your experience, generally, where do you find that?
It changes all the time. Yep, it
One great
changes
thing
all
you
the
can
time.
do is go to Google Maps, put it on the satellite view,
Yeah.
and just start scanning up and down the beaches. But every time we have a big storm, hurricane, or whatever, it changes dramatically.
Yeah.
So use it, think of it as this is a good starting point of where I need to look.
Yep.
But what's coming up is super important. He's going to show you what to look for once you get to the beach. So cool thing is, so much of our beaches, our roads run parallel to it. If it doesn't look good, hop in the car and drive. Not a big deal.
Exactly. I would not waste time at a beach that's flat. You're better off spending your time going and trying to find some structure. If you have that time, if you don't have that time, go fishing. It's just fishing. You don't have to have all this gear. If you just have a floating line, don't avoid the surf. Just go and you'll figure it out. But Google Earth is a great tool. Google Earth is not updated every day though, so remember that. You go, oh, I saw these perfect troughs in that photo. Well, that photo might have been 4 months ago. Like you said, it's a great starting point to go, okay, well, that beach had it once, it might be back now. I do tend to find a lot of good structure like west of Gulf Shores, like Gulf Shores to Fort Morgan. A lot of those beaches have structure more often than not. But there was times last year where I was like, man, this beach was awesome this time of last year. And I show up and it just looks like that first photo is just, flat palm and no structure at all for miles and miles and miles. And that's where you get in the car and you start driving. I live down there, so it makes it easy for me. On my lunch break, I'll just pull into a parking lot, hop out, take the binoculars, look each direction, just look for things like that. That way I know, if I come back here this weekend or come back tomorrow, I scout all those spots. I know not everybody can do that. I can't always do that. But if you do have the time, look at those things. If not, like you talked about before, the networking, call somebody that lives down there, call somebody that maybe fished last week and say, what did that beach look like? Was it flat, or was there some good troughs? Was there, any current, stuff like that? These are good examples of these pockets where you see these outflows. Generally, all beaches are going to have an outside sandbar. You'll see that lighter line in the shallower water. These pockets, if there's a break in that sandbar where you would see these waves breaking, then no waves and more waves, that would be here. There's going to be some type of flow going out of there. So these are like high traffic points for fish. They're going to get inside this trough and outside. This water flowing out of this main trough, flowing out, is going to bring all kinds of shrimp and fish and bait with it. And those fish are going to stage up at these points. It's just like breaking down a river, I would imagine. Just fishing anywhere. Creek mouths, you got to think of this like a creek mouth. Where would you fish that? You can fish the points to start with. If you roll up to a beach and it's flat and you don't see any breaks, I look for dips in the sandbar. We call this a bottleneck, where that sandbar comes closer. What that does is this may be 100 yards from the beach to the second bar. This may be 50 yards. What's it going to do? It's going to funnel all those fish, all those pompano that are in that trough migrating down the beach. It's going to funnel them all into a tighter dip area. And usually what you'll find is when that sandbar dips in, you're going to have a really deep, hard ledge on the backside of that bar. And I would focus on that backside of that bar. They like to sit in there. The waves that are breaking over this are gonna churn up that deep water ledge right there on the backside of the sandbar. And I'm gonna throw in there until, you know, my arms hurt because chances are they're gonna be sitting right in that pocket. I do have a picture of this exact setup that I'll get to. This is another great setup that you'll see often. You'll have currents that could be from storms or wind that will push down the beach, and then will cause these points to push these sand out. So you'll have a tide pool, water dumping out, and then that sand will come out and cause a point. So there'll be a really deep hole, and it can be, you know, just as wide as a shop even. And a lot of people would skip over that because they'd go, there's not gonna be fish in there. It's, you know, it's only 10 feet off the beach, so that hole might be 3 or 4 feet deep. I've seen numerous flounders stack in those holes, especially in the fall time. They will stack right there. I mean, I'm talking one little roll cast to the other side of that bar, and you'll be surprised. You would think you could see them all, you know. Sometimes dirty, even when it's clean, those flounder will hide, and you pick off flounder and whiting and stuff like that right in those pockets. So these are good places to focus. Yeah, definitely don't overlook that close stuff. A lot of people get to the beach and they immediately get in the water and they just take off to the second sandbar. They think the, you know, big fish got to be far out. It's just not the case. I've seen it over and over again. So these tide pools cause a lot of current. Like I said, they'll pour out these holes and fish will sit in there. Same thing as the last slide. All this current flows out between these sandbars. You'll definitely see fish in those areas. This is that exact setup. You can see the sandbar exposed here. There's a tide pool. Tide pool's flowing here. You see how that super dark line? That's probably 4 feet deep, and it goes like a vertical ledge. And those flounder will sit right there on that point. You'll get redfish in these pockets. You'll get trout in these pockets. You can see how it's deep to shallow. That's what I look for. This is like a really, really good setup. This is a further pullback point of that. You can actually see all the current on this. So it's deeper there. You know, jetty, I would hit all of these points, every single point there. But I would start at the closest ones to me because you don't want to go walking into a trough where there might be fish. I always cast ahead of me. And in points like this, I'll cast parallel to the beach. Especially targeting flounder in the winter and fall. I'll cast parallel to the beach because there's numerous times where I step my foot in the water and they flutter off. They're almost laid up on the sand. You'll hook them very close to you. So this is a great little like fish highway. The seasons, March to December, generally. January, February gets brutally cold. Sometimes I've caught pompano in January even. That's just those warmer years where they just a few linger around, but the bite is going to get pretty slow in that January, February time. Everything slows down. You might luck out and have a school of bull reds come into range, but it's too cold. I'm not going to be walking the beach in those times anyways, just because the water's so cold. The big speckled trout, like I was talking about, April to June, May is like the month for big specks for me. That's just, if I look back, I keep a log. I don't write down a log, I just take photos of everything that I catch. That way I can go back and look at it. Like when I know that season's coming up, when I know it's trout coming up, I'm looking at the calendar going, all right, it's April 15th, I'll pull up my phone, I'll scroll to last year, and I'll go, you know, May 15th, May 15th, May 15th. You know, seeing all these nice fish on those days, and it really helps me. Obviously, different years it might get warmer quicker, but it kind of helps you like create a pattern without having to write everything down. The flounder bite can be really good in the fall and winter. You can catch them deep into the winter, but October, November are key. Those fish push out onto the beaches at those times. The regulation changes to flounder recently have really done like wonders for our flounder fishery. Last year we caught tons of small flounder on the beach. A lot of people get bummed and go, oh, I'm catching all these small fish. I'm like, that's an awesome thing to see because we weren't catching those fish a couple of years ago, and now we are. We had numerous like double-digit fish days last year on small flounder, and there's some big ones mixed in, but it's really good to see. But October, November, as soon as you start getting those first couple cold fronts, my mind goes to flounder. redfish, September to December. We do see those big bulls like that first photo. That's more of a sight fishing game. Those clearer days. I'm watching outside of that second bar. If it's closer, they will show themselves. They're too big not to. So those are really, really fun to target if they push in close enough. Pompano, we're coming up on our fall run. I caught some pompano 2 days ago. Saw a lot and caught some, so it's really, really good to see. That was actually down, there's new islands out by the lighthouses that they dredged, and those pompano were stacked around those new sand islands out there a couple days ago. That was really cool to see. So if they're out there, I know they're around the beaches too, because that's right there at the mouth of the bay. And some really quality fish too. So April, May, everybody knows, everybody thinks, spring break, pompano run, they're going to push through. That's going to be your biggest push of pompano. If you want to catch pompano on the fly, that's going to be your best opportunity. You can catch them, like I said, I caught them in January. You can catch them right now and eat. But the water temps are perfect in those times, April, May, and then September to October. We do really well. We have like what we call a fall run. It's going to be a little less than the spring run, but there's still a good bit of fish that will push through. I think we've covered some of this, but I like to fish an incoming tide. I like the tide to be fuller. I feel like that more water pushes up close to the beach, those fish follow that tide in closer, so it pushes them closer. Low tide, everything gets sucked out, so those fish are feeding out a little bit further. Full and new moon, a couple days before the full moon, a couple days after. A couple days before the full moon, I find I catch like my biggest speckled trout because they're getting ready to spawn in the springtime. So they're just like, they're gorging, they'll feed on everything just before that spawn. You catch them, they'll have like their red belly, they're full of eggs and everything. And then after they spawn, they'll also feed heavily again to kind of re-nourish themselves. So that's when I catch my like biggest ones, and everything seems to come alive right before those moons. Cleaner water, like I said, we're not always blessed with clean water, but sometimes it looks like that's in here, and I've sight fished tons of days in the last few years here. But if there are times when those currents will push those, you'll have a hard west wind, and so maybe you're planning on fishing Fort Morgan, but you know it's been blowing west for a few days. So that west wind's going to push all that river water and bay water over. It's probably time to go to the east. Not that you can't catch fish in that dirty water, but it doesn't have to look like the Bahamas. But if it's chocolate milk, I'm going to head east and look for some cleaner water. There are those rare occasions where it will be dirty over there and clean over here, but most of the time it's going to be dirty to the west. Lately it's been really nice because it's been dry, so everything's pretty clean now. But early mornings, late evenings, 9 again, we don't have to go over that, but yeah, I get out there early, like an hour before the sun comes up, because sometimes it takes a while to walk and get to where you're going, park the truck, bring your stuff. I like to be on the beach in the dark. Some of these bites are a very small window. High sun, I think these fish, water's clear, the birds can see everything, the birds will pressure these fish into deeper water. So early morning, everything seems to push in closer. So I do really well early in the morning, and then late in the evening I'll get off work, go get for a couple hours. It seems to do the same exact thing. So I do like those low light hours. Obviously, if you're gonna sight fish, if the water's really clear, if you're sight fishing, all that goes out the window. If you're seeing fish, they're there and you can catch them, great. But all those other times, I do feel like there's a lot more fish pushed in close early. But that's about it.
Awesome.
In regards to the conditions you're talking about, tides,
Yep.
moon, do you keep an eye on the surf?
Yes,
as well?
absolutely.
Do you try to go when the surf is less, or is there a sweet spot, do you think, that turns things up? Or?
The sweet spot would be, that's a great question. The sweet spot would be a little bit of surf. And I'm talking like less than a foot, but a light texture on the water, and I like to see a little bit of wave breaking on those bars. When it's mirror calm, it can be tough. But when there's a little bit of action, but it's, like I said, these are, it's like really hard to find these days sometimes because it seems like it's either blowing or not. But having a little bit of surf action, I think what that does, having that current and those waves breaking on those bars really churns up the bottom. This gets these fish excited. They can ambush their prey. It hides your fly better, where they're just not as picky. You know, when it's crystal clear, there's no current, it's flat calm. You know, they can see everything from a mile away, so that they get a little bit tougher. So I don't like Bahamas clear water. You know, everybody's like, I want to go to Destin, I can see these redfish. That's great. I like clean water, but a little bit of tint to it. I do find it like eases that pressure off a little bit. They're not quite as spooky when it's not like the Bahamas.
What's your max wave height if you're gonna look on like wave finders?
2 feet. If it's over, yeah. If there's a 3 in there, it's over. Yeah, I'm not doing
Especially
that.
on
Yeah.
high tide.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. 1 foot or less was great with a little bit of wind. Those north wind mornings are great because you can bomb a cast without trying because it's pushing it. Only a northeast wind to the right hand pushes the fly away from it, so I'm not snagging myself. But
What about in regards to winds? Are there some winds that are better for the fish than others?
I don't like a west wind, just because of the fact that it pushes that dirtier water over here. Usually the west winds, that we call it a devil wind, just
And on the beach, it pushes
ruins
the fly
everything.
into your ear.
Yep, exactly. It pushes your fly into you. It's just, there's nothing good.
If you're right, like Tom taught you to do.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
That's what switched to the.
I haven't found any positive thing to say about a west wind. I don't know. I know there's spots where it gets good on a west wind, but as far as the beach goes, I avoid those stiffer west wind days. A southeast or just like a straight offshore would be my pick for sure. You don't want to be throwing into the wind all day because, like I said, there's a lot of blind cast. You know, you have to blind cast a lot in the surf. It'd be great if we could see all these fish. Like I said, if you take this information and you pinpoint those spots where you see those rips and you see you notice a hole, that water's super dark right there, super light right there. I know that's a hole, like I said, it's picking apart a river. You know there's gonna be fish there, you know? So, you know, try to break it down into small sections, not try to, you know, get too big outside your thing. You know, walk the beach and I cover a lot of miles. A lot of times we'll walk 10, 12 miles a day. It's good exercise. Further you get away from people, the better. Usually a lot of these things, like I said, I like to fish between Gulf Shores and Fort Morgan because those are the gaps. And it's not because, I mean, I think the fishing may be better in that zone, but it's mainly because I can get away from people. Where there's less pressure, there's more fish usually. So I like to walk. I'm not gonna cast in one area for very long. I'm gonna hit one of these pockets. If I see pocket after pocket, I'll give it 6, 7 casts in that pocket. Usually, if they're there, it happens really fast. They're in there they're only in there to feed. Those fish are not pushed in close in that trough to just sit and hang out. Like that's not where they live. They're in there to feed and they're in there on that bait. So usually, if you put a fly in front of them, they're really likely to eat it. So I don't waste a lot of time just casting one. I might walk down the beach and then come back and go, and that thing looked perfect. Wow, was there not anything there? And then give it a few more casts. But usually I'm cast move. I have this thing in my head. I just make a cast, walk 20 steps, make a cast, walk 20 steps. Just covering ground is your friend out there for sure. So,
Can you talk a little bit more about your strategy with your flies? And is it the fly you choose? Is it based on the season and what you're targeting? Or do you have kind of like
the
something
only time I would change my flies if I know, like I've been out there and I see those big redfish, like, and I can sight fish those redfish. I'll size up to something bigger, maybe a black and purple, like traditional redfish fly to like grab their attention. But we call this, talk about this fly, super simple fly, like stupid simple. Call it a neon icon. Sold tons of them through our site. I made this fly because it's super fast to tie. It's made with super cheap materials. That's wire-free, brush from hairline. It's like $3 a pack to make 100 flies out of it. I got tired of losing like flies with expensive materials to bluefish and ladyfish and stuff. I noticed that I was getting bit on brighter colors a lot. I throw these, like I said, 99% of the time, it's that like speckled trout, redfish, pompano, whiting. I don't know how many species we caught on this thing. Just keep throwing it because it just keeps working. I don't know what else to say. It works. Like I said, there's people
Is the
that
craft for UV or no?
Nope.
No?
Nope. Just regular chartreuse, whatever legs. Like I said, I started throwing this for pompano. It's kind of like reverse. Like I said, I started changing my mind about pompano because I started targeting trout with a little bit bigger fly, you know, versus like a traditional sand flea, and I started catching more pompano. And then like I started throwing the brighter colors on this style fly for the pompano, and then the trout started eating it. And like so far, I haven't found anything that doesn't eat these, you know. So it's like I keep throwing it. Dirty water, it's great colors for dirty water, but I throw it in crystal clear Bahamas water, and it's still been successful for me. Like I said, everybody has their go-to. Some people are gonna go olive and white clouser. You're right, it will catch everything, but this is my confidence fly. Super easy. I can tie it less than 5 minutes, and they're cheap to make. Like I said, you can make a ton of these off. You buy a pack of that brush and a pack of craft fur, a pack of eyes, and you can make a dozen of these in a night because you're going to lose flies in the surf, especially in the summertime. I like the early spring before all the ladyfish show up and the bluefish show up and the pompano are there. That's like prime time, you know. But yeah, you're definitely going to lose fly. There's a lot of toothy fish out there, which they're a lot of fun too.
What's the fly called again?
A neon icon is what I call it.
Icon.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
One thing I want to stress to you guys is, if you notice what Sam was saying, we are coming into a season that has all the same fish that you have in the spring when we have so many wonderful visitors from out of town. Okay? We're going to get on the other side of Labor Day here directly. Right after that, y'all are going to have these beaches to yourself. Y'all can enjoy this. Get out there, go do it. All the same lessons that y'all learned today from Sam and that y'all will learn from going out to the beaches and trying it is going to be applicable when spring gets here. And one thing that it is always an adventure when you go surf fishing, because there's never any telling what you're going to find out there. And that to me is my most favorite part about it is, what are we going to catch? I don't know, but we're going to find out. And same thing Sam said, you guys can have a small selection of flies and just be super effective with it, because there's certain things in Sam's presentation. Again, this is going to be on YouTube. I suggest y'all watch it over and over again. It was super informative. But, you know, there's just certain things that just work for certain reasons. But get out there. It's the fall, guys. Coming right up. Go enjoy. Go do.
One more thing that I thought about just then. We didn't talk about how you strip these flies. I do.
All right, I'm turning this off now. Y'all got to come to that.
My go-to strip for a lot of things, not just the surf. I'm gonna throw the fly on that intermediate line. I throw fluorocarbon leader, might sink more, doesn't matter. Like I said, I don't think these fish are super leader shy either, but I like to get this fly down, and then I'm gonna do 2 fast, hard, short strips, and I'm gonna let it sit. We do a 2x3 is what we call it, like a strip, 3-second pause, strip, 3-second pause. And if the bite slows down, a lot of times, like when we're on like a hot trout bite, a lot of times you can strip it as fast as you want early in the morning, and they're eating it. If they stop eating it, pause longer. A lot of people never stop moving that fly, and he is. You got to give him time to find that fly. They will pattern out that fly skipping, and they will eat it on the fall almost every time. This fly is hopping across the bottom. They'll see it stop, hop across the bottom. And the next time it stops, he's going to hit it. When you come tight on that strip after that pause, that's usually when they're there. So I do like the strip pause technique. Real erratic though, like pretty hard strips just to get a lot of action to grab their attention. But a lot of times, like I said, those pauses can get longer. And I've had trout get so picky, like I'll strip hard twice, and I mean it's counting to 6, 7, 8, 9, you know, and then he eats it. So it's kind of wild to see like how long it can sit before they eat it. But I do like to put those hard strips and then those longer pauses in. Pompano like stuff moving really fast. If it's winter time and the bite is slowed down across the board and I'm specifically targeting those flounder, I'll pretty much do that same thing. Don't do quite as erratic of a strip. I just kind of, because I want to maintain as much contact with the bottom as possible for those flounder, you know, because they're just laying flat in the sand. So if you drag this across their face, they're going to come up and eat it. But I do like to spend time, you know, I think they see that puff of sand, you saw the commotion that thing makes, so maintaining contact with the bottom is really good for those. Any questions? All good? Thank you guys.
Really cool.
All right.